This is the I Heart My Life show. Welcome to the I Heart My Life show. I have the incredible Georgie Shears with me here today. She is a nervous system strategist. And I know we're going to get into a lot of things around nervous system regulation, anxiety, all of the things that tend to freak us out and hold us back from living lives that we really love. So I'm excited for today's conversation because I personally have suffered from anxiety all my life, and it's been magnified definitely with running a business, being an entrepreneur, being a mom, trying to do all the things. So I'm equally as curious to hear what you have to say. And I know it's going to be a really amazing convo. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. This is a real privilege to be on with you. I love chatting with you, and this is just wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So why don't you share a little bit about what inspired this work? Because I know it wasn't always part of your journey. It wasn't always part of, your professional life. So what was it? What is the story behind all the work that you do in the world?
Honestly, my own journey. And I think so many of us who are in this world have got here through necessity. As a young girl, there was no way I ever thought I would be out in the world helping other people because my history is that of low self-worth, never feeling good enough. I have a really long history of anxiety, debilitating panic attacks, the thought of sitting here with you talking to thousands of people was so far away from anything I thought I'd be doing. And I guess what's led me here is desperation. Anxiety plagued me for a long time. Anxiety is terrifying and a feeling you think is something you have, and you think that is who you are and something you'll suffer with forever. And sort of through not listening to that and partying it away, I'm going to be honest, covering it up, always doing the things to mask that, not realizing I had any control over it, led to me shoving it down for many years, led to leading a life that was so far away from who I really was, thinking I could find solutions in the external, I guess is what it was, until your body is so clever. You try and push it down for so long that it gets stronger and it gets stronger, and it resulted in, without going into all the details of how, the most debilitating panic attacks, which I suffered for a good few years, to the extent that at their worst point, they would start about 30 seconds after I woke up in the morning. And I always describe it as a whoosh would come over me. I don't want to go into the description of a panic attack too much, actually, because if your listeners do suffer, hearing someone else talk about it can evoke that emotion and that reaction. But that would last with me all day until I went to sleep. And it was sheer desperation where I was in a relationship I desperately needed to get out of. I didn't dare. And eventually the feelings became so strong, it left me with no choice because I just could not go on like that anymore. And then it led on to talk therapies. And then talk therapies led on to all sorts of different things. And here we are. To be honest, it goes into a big long story, but we can chat about that in a bit. It was COVID was really the turning point for how I got into the nervous system as being the sort of the key, the thing I'd
Yeah.
been looking for, the actual rewiring part that stopped the anxiety and the panic attacks. And
Hmm.
here we are.
I know that you and I have spoken before, and you told me that you feel like when people are experiencing anxiety and panic attacks, your body obviously knows that something is off, and you're basically not being truthful or honest with yourself. Can you talk a little bit more about
Yeah.
that and what was actually going on in your life? I know you mentioned the relationship, but what was it you weren't being honest about with yourself?
Yeah, I will. And firstly, I just want to clarify that this is not a blame thing. I always feel when I say you're not being honest with yourself, it's like you should take responsibility for not being honest. We don't realize we're not being honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Our nervous system's sole job is to keep us safe. So all it does, if you imagine your nervous system is almost like a database of every experience you have ever gone through in your life, and it will look to that database. It looks externally, it's something called neuroception. At any one moment, your nervous system is scanning your environment saying, am I safe? Am I in danger? Am I safe? Am I in danger? Am I safe? And it'll look at the external and then look back into your database and say, when have I experienced this before? Was it safe? Was it not? Was it safe? Was it not? And you will react in a way that kept you alive, whether it is helpful or not in that moment. Now, I was in a relationship that had once been very happy at the point when these panic attacks happened. It had once been really happy, but it hadn't been for a long time. But I had a stepson at the time who lived with us, who I loved dearly. This harks back to my own childhood. My dad left at 1. I had a very upsetting relationship with my dad where he would just not turn up to pick me up sometimes. I'd be waiting in the window at the front with my coat on, ready for him to pick me up, and he just wouldn't turn up. My mum was amazing. She would say, "Oh, he's doing such and such." But then you get older and you realise what's happening and you realise you're not someone's priority. And that had set the scene. It had wired in me that I was not important enough. When I was in this relationship, I guess there were two things playing out. One, I was not important enough to me, my own happiness to be important. I was so busy trying to make him happy and everybody else around me happy. And his son, I loved dearly. We had a great relationship. I didn't want to leave. So I stayed and I stayed, and I knew I was so unhappy, and I became more and more unhappy. But all I kept saying to myself was, "Well, you've made your bed, you've got to lie in it." And my body was saying, "No, you need to get out. You're not happy. You need to be honest with yourself." And I think it was those two things playing out. It was one saying, "You're not safe here," but the other one saying, "But you're alive here. You are safe here." Do you understand what it was? That real wrangle.
Yeah.
It was almost like my inner self saying to me, "You need to get out," and I will continue to get louder and louder and louder until you listen. And it did. That's exactly what happened. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think, a lot of people can relate to that, where from the outside looking in, nothing appears to be wrong. But internally, your intuition knows that something is off. You're not in the right place. You're not with the right person. You're not doing the right thing. And so your body just keeps yelling at you and screaming louder and louder, as you described. And it can be hard
Yeah.
to know what to do because the part of your brain that is scanning for information rationally can't really see that there's something off, but internally you know that there is. So I can see why
You are
there's two things
so
wrestling.
right.
Yeah.
Honestly, just hearing you say that, because from the outside looking in, it's really funny. I had a lovely home. I would cook Sunday lunches. I am a real nurturer. More ways I like to be quite well turned out. I always went to the gym. I had a great social life, always had great friends. It's that real picture that people see of, "Oh, you've got everything. What's your problem?"
Yeah.
And almost that feeds into, why can't you just be grateful? But it wasn't like that inside. But the feeling in the household, and this is just one small incident in my life. This is not, it's not, it doesn't all
Yeah.
hinge on this, it goes much further back. But that sort of being a good girl, don't upset the apple cart, that's where it comes back to. It's a lot further back than this relationship. Everything's fine. Why would you want to change this? This is how life should look. You've
Yeah.
got a nice house, you've got a good relationship, you've got a really good job. I was in media at the time. Everything looked great. But it's how you feel inside. That is the dictator. That is who you are, isn't it? That's the thing
Mm,
inside. And if that is off, that's
yeah.
why life isn't being created in the way that you want it. And I Heart My Life comes from
Yeah, exactly.
inner feeling, hey?
And so you obviously got out of that relationship. And did
Yeah.
you find that your nervous system, like were the panic attacks, did they dissipate or what happened next for you personally?
Okay, so I left that relationship, finally dared leave, if I'm honest. I left with 2 bin bags full of clothes and a pillow in the boot of my car and
Wow.
£50,000 worth of debt and a bankruptcy order. So I left with nothing.
Wow.
And I sofa surfed for a little bit because I have great friends. My mum lived an hour away. I could have gone to live with her. This was not a desperate situation, but I wanted to stay near my friends and where my social life
Mhm.
was. I'd just left a very long relationship. And I got into talk therapy straight away with the support. And my mum helped me rent a property, and a dear, dear cousin of mine let me move in with her just while I sorted myself out for a few weeks. And I started to enjoy myself as I was having talk therapy. I started doing things that made me happy. And I found, although I'd lost everything material, I had never felt so free in my life. It was just me. And
Yeah.
that, yeah, absolutely started. The panic attacks dissipated completely. The anxiety did not dissipate for many, many years after this. My
Mm-hmm.
nervous system was in a total state.
Mm-hmm.
It was still hardwired for anything that happened. I was in a complete state of high alert all the time. So the
Right.
anxiety would repeat often, no matter how much talk therapy. Anyway, shortly after leaving that relationship, I actually met my husband, which was not in the plan. And we've
Mhm.
now been together 16 years. And I just started to experience life in a very different way. I had always told myself, I was scared of heights. I was claustrophobic. I was not the type of person who could ever talk in front of a room full of people. And I would go on stages. I'm now here doing this. I believed that what I thought about myself was absolutely true. I didn't know about limiting beliefs. I didn't know about thinking bigger. I didn't know you could rewrite all these things at that point. So I ended up going to Egypt with a good friend of mine, having loads of fun, and I went diving. Someone who's been claustrophobic. They nearly didn't let me do it because they said you're gonna have a panic attack underwater. But I was like, come on, people do this every day. I was very rational in my thinking, and I did it. And it was a little step towards showing myself I can do hard things. A, I'd left a relationship with nothing. That was
Mm.
terrified to leave. B, I'd gone diving. Then I went to Australia, someone who's scared of heights, and I climbed the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And I just
Wow.
started doing these things in small incremental steps that proved that I was not the person I was telling myself I was. I was far bigger than that, you know? So, yes, the panic attacks did dissipate, but at this point, I was still on antidepressants now to help me manage. But while I was on the antidepressants, I was also having talk therapy and getting to understand my behaviors. And I became to really understand why I reacted in such ways. But I still couldn't get rid of the thing happening, the anxiety appearing. I think the best therapy I went for was something called EMDR,
Hmm.
which I'm sure you've heard of, which was
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. That a lot of that was to do with my dad, why I reacted in certain ways, why I hate the term people pleasing because I think it's bandied around so much, but that is what it boils down to. You spend
Yeah.
a whole lifetime trying to please everybody else, you forget yourself. And I think that is where anxiety breeds.
Right.
It's forgetting
I love that.
yourself.
Yeah. And I'm curious to know, so for how many years do you feel like you were suffering with anxiety?
I trained to become an individual design coach, so like a pimped up PT, we'll call it just for the ease. And I did that 12 years ago, and I was still suffering anxiety then, definitely. And then I
Mhm.
learned to use exercise as well as talk therapy to manage it. And I would say it wasn't till COVID 2020 that I stopped suffering with anxiety.
Mm.
That had been lifelong up until then, and that's when I
Yeah.
started to find nervous system work.
Well, I definitely want to hear more about all of that because, for me, with suffering from anxiety, I did ask you once, do you ever feel it? And you said, no, it's gone away and you know how to manage
Yeah,
it. And so I think
yeah.
for so many people, myself included, listening, we want to know, like, what are those magic steps? Magic isn't the
Do you
right
know
word, but that's
what?
what's coming to mind.
I think it's really important to note, right? I'm going to sound like a stuck record on the nervous system. That is because I know it to be true. Your nervous system literally creates your whole experience of life. It is responsible for every feeling you have in your body, every sensation, every reaction. Your autonomic nervous system is automatic bit that we don't even think about is responsible for everything. So
Yeah.
even now, this is relevant to the question you asked. Even now, when we're sitting on this call, you are, without even thinking about it, you're noticing the tone of my voice, you're noticing the expression on my face, you're noticing your environment, and it's constantly saying, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Now, when you're suffering anxiety, what is actually happening is your nervous system is telling you it is unsafe, it feels unsafe. So even if there is no danger around, your body is perceiving danger. And I
Hmm.
think the absolute key thing that set me free was learning that all that feeling is a sensation from your body telling you, I feel like I'm in danger. Now,
Mm.
when you suffer with anxiety, you think, oh my God, I'm panicking, I'm in anxiety, oh, it's coming, it's coming. And you're in a perpetual miscommunication loop because you are making, by accident, you're making that worse by worrying about it coming on. When you can start to feel that sensation as a message from your body rather than something happening to you, it's like, I'm in danger. We learn that what I need to do here, I'm not in danger. I can see I'm not in danger. But the thing is with the nervous system, what we don't realize is that 80% of the messages in our body start in our body and go up to the brain. Only 20% come from the brain down to the body. So trying to talk your way out of anxiety, we know it just doesn't work. We have to show our nervous system we're safe, and we do that through our senses. So when we start feeling that feeling of anxiety, what we need to do is show our body we're safe because anxiety is panic about what might happen. So what we
Hmm.
need to do is show our body that right this moment, I'm really safe. So there's some really practical tools I use that I can give you here now. Just look around the room, orient yourself in the moment. So let's say there's a beautiful practice called 5 4 3 2 1. You might have to write it down if you're perimenopausal, you'll forget the order this is in. So look around the room and notice 5 things you can see in that moment. So
Mhm.
right now, I might see a microphone. I can see you. I can see a piece of paper in front of me. I can see my fingers. That's quite nice. Orient yourself with your own body. I can see carpet. 5 things. 4 things you can touch. 3 things you can hear. Number
Yeah.
one is taste.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Or there's just a really simple one if you can't remember that. Just anything to ground yourself in the moment. Feel your feet on the floor or in your shoes. Feel the sensations in your feet. Can you feel tingling? Can you feel pulsing? Go through each toe. Just doing something that grounds you in the real moment. Another one, just trace your hand. Look at your hand and trace with the other finger down each finger from the tip to the wrist. Anything that orients you in that moment, and you'll notice you are showing your nervous system it's calm and it dissipates that feeling.
So
Once you
beautiful.
start to build confidence in yourself that you can do that, it stops the fear of one coming on because you think, okay, there's a signal that my body feels it's in danger. I can see I'm not. What can I do to show it in this moment? And the more it starts to learn it's safe, the less those moments start to occur. So I
Mm.
hope that's sort of gives you a little taster as to how nervous system regulation work. It can
Yeah,
totally change your experience of life day to day. It's
totally.
unbelievable.
I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Before we get back to the interview, I wanted to share a little something I think you'll find valuable. If you're looking for more clarity on what you want in life or feel like something is holding you back, I've created a free Dream Life Guide just for you. It's a step-by-step resource to help you get clear on your goals and break through any mindset blocks that might be in the way. You can grab it at iheartmylife.com/guide. And as a bonus, I've also included a private podcast feed to go along with the guide to give you even more value and support. So head over to iheartmylife.com/guide to download it for free. All right, now back to the conversation. So I'm just thinking about this and, what would create anxiety, say, like in this situation? A lot of people who aren't used to being on camera, especially me in the beginning, it was a big deal to be on camera, to talk to someone. There'd be so much pressure to ask the right questions. So
Yeah.
we have such weird anxiety inducing situations now. Do you find that because of the world we live in, because of the fast pace, because of the social media, like, do you feel like any of that feeds into all of us being a lot more anxious?
All of that. I
Yeah.
think 100% the world we live in now is not the world we are designed to live in. We are all living. So you've all heard of fight or flight. Call it fight, flight, or mobilization. It's that real feeling of needing to do. So you have your parasympathetic nervous system, which is that real when you feel calm and in flow. And your sympathetic is when your body feels it's in danger and it needs to run or fight. We are living in that. So although we don't have approaching lions anymore, this anxiety we feel in our body when an email pings, when we're worried that we're in trouble about something, or a text message, or a this, or a this instant reaction to all this external stimuli, the noise, the constant barrage, the constant need for our attention in an instant, it gives our bodies the same feeling as an approaching lion. We're releasing adrenaline and cortisol all the time. That sympathetic state, that fight or flight, we need it. It keeps us alive. But we're supposed to be in that state for bursts of 20 minutes at a time to keep us alive. We're living in that, you know, and we are producing these chemicals all the time. It's inflammatory. And interesting to note, when you are in that state, your nervous system is so wonderful. It has got your back more than anything you believe. It's constantly working to keep you alive, okay? And it will do anything in its power to do so. Yes, when we're living in this world where we're constantly striving for more, 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 and we're in this state, what it's actually doing is borrowing all the energy it can to keep us safe in this state. We've got to fight, we've got to fight. And what happens is we don't need rational thought when we're in that, because if we need to fight or flight, we actually don't want to waste any time with critical thinking. So it switches off our rational thinking brain. And it switches off the energy that goes to our digestion, hence people suffer with digestive disorders. If you think about it, our immune systems aren't required in that state. That's why so many people are suffering with chronic illnesses, sleep disturbances. We don't want to sleep in that state. All these chemicals going around our bodies aren't needed to sleep. So what we're actually doing, absolutely the world we're living in contributes. But that's not to scare people. I think the most important thing we can do is recognize that and be kind to ourselves and start introducing some practices into our lives. Like the absolute two game-changing things for me have been not watching the news at all since 2020. Doesn't mean you ignore it. You can choose to look at things in your own way when you want. Absolutely don't look at your phone for a minimum of half an hour after waking up. Be in your own life. Wake up. Thank you for another day alive on this beautiful planet. Not everybody gets that opportunity. Do a meditation or sit quietly, look out of the window, put your feet on the floor, be in your own life. Bit of calm breathing, and honestly, you are starting your day with a regulated nervous system rather than being in that reaction, fight, or flight straight away. You do have access to this control over your own life. And from that place, you can think rationally. Do you know how much more productive you are when your prefrontal cortex is online? So we don't need to be pushing 18-hour days. We can probably do it with a 4-hour, really focused, regulated nervous system. We'd produce so much more. So, yeah, 100%. It's a very long
Mm.
answer to a short question.
Yeah. And what happened for you in 2020 that really changed everything?
It was difficult. So, just to say, I'd mentioned antidepressants earlier. I have nearly a 14-year-old daughter. That's my eldest, and a 9-year-old son. I haven't taken antidepressants since I got pregnant with her. So, just to let you know, this journey has worked. I did set up my own one-to-one business. 2020, obviously, you know what happened. Had to shut down my one-to-one business. It very sadly coincided with a time when my dear cousin was in her later stages of cancer. We knew she wasn't going to make it. I took my kids out of school early, and as I say, I had to close down my business. Health anxiety had always been my thing, Emily. Health
Mhm.
anxiety had been the thing. I always felt like I had a brain tumor that no one knew about. They just couldn't see it, but I knew I had it, or someone
All
explained
right.
illness. And when something scary happened, that is how that manifested. So COVID hits with the very reality of my cousin's cancer, and my health anxiety came back unbelievably, like off the scale. And that was the first panic attack I had had for over 10 years. And that terrified me. What was my first thought? Oh my God, they're back. And it was watching the news that did that. It was looking at people struggling on ventilators. And I 100% was like, that is going to be me. And I had a massive panic attack in the kitchen with the children. They didn't know, but I couldn't breathe. And
Wow.
I was trying to make out this was all fun, everything was safe, we're going to have a great
Yeah.
time. And I just had to get out of the kitchen, and I went upstairs to go to a makeshift gym I'd made myself upstairs. As I told you, I used to manage anxiety with exercise, and my body just totally collapsed. It would not
Mm.
even walk up the stairs, never mind get on a bike. That's that, your body having a word with you. And I was trembling, I couldn't breathe. And I literally got on Google. I'm like, how do I stop a panic attack now? And a meditation came up, and I'll be honest, at that point, and I'm like, yeah, really busy Georgie with this brain, like exercise, meditate, whatever.
Yeah.
12 minutes later, I'd done a meditation, and it totally stopped the panic attack. And it brought that rational thought of, you've just watched the news and had a panic attack, just don't watch. And that was the absolute turning point for me realizing that, oh, you just found the answer inside you. And honestly, that was the turning point of me then deep diving into, wow, maybe like the answers are inside, and actually all the, the tablets and the this and the that, the exercise, everything external, I still exercise every day. I love it. I think it's really important. But actually, I think the healing comes from 100% inside. And so I started deep diving into this work, into your intuition, into getting quiet. I've meditated every day since. And I always say, I'm yet to sit on a hill in robes. I'm just not that. I'm very down to earth and normal. But yeah, getting quiet. So, mate, so that was the absolute turning
Mm.
point. And you
Thank you for
said
sharing
before
that.
about, sorry to talk over you, but you said
Yeah.
before about getting on a Zoom call. I had never been online. I'd been in person training people, but then we're in COVID. And I decided I was so passionate about this that about 4 months later, I'd learned so much. I felt the best I'd ever felt during COVID while my cousin was poorly. I got better. And
Mm.
I want to shout it from the rooftop. So I'm like, how do I do this in COVID? So I started doing an online course about launching an online course. And I had to get on Zoom and I was bright red and sweating. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, no, it can be terrifying in the beginning. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. I know that's such a personal story, and I appreciate you going there and your vulnerability. So I'm curious to know on a daily basis, what does your practice look like? Because we all know that this is not you just do one thing and then you're good to
No.
go for life. This is a daily practice. So what does that look like for you?
Oh, I'll tell you, and I'm still learning. Hey, none of us experts, right? This is a lifetime thing. So before I say this, this is not a blueprint for other people to copy. This is what I have found works for me, and we are all human and all different. And this is why we work on the individual. So I set my alarm for 20 to 6 in the morning because I love that space before my two children are around. First thing I do is wake up. Honestly, I said it before. Thank you for another day alive, healthy, and thriving on this beautiful planet. I put my headphones in. I do between a 15-minute and a 30-minute guided meditation using the Insight Timer app, which is available to everybody. It tends to be a yoga nidra or an NSDR. I then get up, I go for a shower, I have 2-minute cold blast at the end because it makes me feel incredible. It makes me feel like I can do anything. I come back in my room. Oh, I spend time doing my facial routine. I look at myself, tell myself I love myself and I'm so proud and I'm so happy with who I am. Put my body cream on, be present in my body. Come in my room and I do a gratitude practice and it takes a couple of minutes. That's it. Oh, sorry, first thing I do when I wake up is hydrate. I've done this for about 15 years. A pint of water with the juice of half a lemon, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and a grind of Himalayan pink salt. And then I get myself dressed with my clothes that I've left out the night before with the intention of who I want to be that day. I make my beds, I put the house straight for the next day, and I come downstairs and I do breakfast with my children, and it's all very calm. The bags are all ready the night before, and it's just a beautiful way to start. Every new moment is a new moment, I feel, and I want it to be that. I don't want hangovers from before, so I don't want to be rushing around and shouting people because things aren't ready. And at the end of the day, Emily, I get sleep. I get minimum 7 hours because it just doesn't work for me if I don't. I don't feel nice. I
Yeah,
just don't feel nice. And I eat incredibly because that's my passion. There's a lot of routine in my life,
yeah. And you
but
work
that
out.
works. I work out every single day. I move every single day. I resistance train 4 times a week. I probably walk on average 12,000 steps a day, but I do that while I learn, like with podcasts or just quiet. I like to stack things on top of each other. While you brush your teeth, look at yourself in the mirror and be present in the moment. Things like that. It's not about
Yeah.
adding more jobs. These are things I enjoy, and yours might look very different.
Right. Well, I think that what you described is really, really powerful. And we can all tune in to when we feel our best. And of course, the alternative when we aren't feeling good, like you found with the news. What are those things that are causing us to have anxiety? And some, of course, we might not be able to avoid. And so then we can use some of your practices. For
Yeah.
example, I have a lot of anxiety around my email because of things that have happened in the past.
Yeah.
And of course, that could be fully outsourced, but I can't never look at an email again in my entire life. And so, what do you say to people who have professional triggers? I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs,
I do,
things that are
yeah.
coming up with that for them that they can't necessarily turn off or avoid. How do you manage that, especially when it comes to business owners?
I honestly think it's that using that signal when you're starting to get that feeling. It's about showing your nervous system you're safe. It's a rewiring.
Yeah.
It's a complete reprogramming of what is in there at the moment. So when that feeling comes up, name it. You know, I'm feeling anxiety because that email's come up. And then it's about teaching yourself that you are safe in that moment and applying that feeling. So you might at that moment do some breathing. And I don't mean really, don't go too heavy with the breathing because heaviness or real control can actually make it worse. But just really feeling into the health in your body in that moment and feeling yourself there and knowing nothing bad is happening. It's a very slow, gentle process rewiring the nervous system. It's not about stringent tools or being hard with yourself. It's totally the other way. It's showing yourself all the times being kind and I'm actually really safe. And over time, those feelings will dissipate. I think what just popped in my head then was I used to have panic attacks driving on the motorway, and
Mm,
I thought that would never go. But slowly over time, you suddenly notice it doesn't happen anymore. And that's
yeah.
beautiful. And it's the same with anything, with entrepreneurs, with anything. They have anxiety around, that feeling you've got to be on. Not checking things can give you that feeling. But the more you learn to, instead of picking up that phone and checking, do something like go and stand outside or touch a tree. I know it sounds mental. Nature is amazingly grounding. Do something instead of that thing. And slowly over time, that habit starts to break, that feeling starts to dissipate.
Yeah.
It's just little steps make a big difference.
And I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned in the morning you do listen to a meditation. I'm assuming that's on your phone. So do you just make sure everything
Yeah,
else is off?
I just don't. That is commitment. No, and you know what? It isn't switched off. And like all of you, I am totally human. When I pick that phone up to look at Insight Timer, I can see the red blobs everywhere. You know, I can
Yeah.
see it. And of course, every bit of me is dying to go, I'll just have a look at that. But that's a choice you make, right?
Yeah.
You are
Agreed.
choosing to dive into a life you choose or one that's being chosen for you. And I know which one has the greater pull for me now.
Yeah. And I think, obviously it is a commitment, it's a choice. And if you find that you don't have that willpower yet, you could always come up with another solution. I know people who have actually put
Yeah.
old-fashioned alarm clocks in their room and then they leave
Yeah.
their phone somewhere, completely different. And then they're using like CDs or something crazy
Yeah.
to listen to
Yeah, but why
meditation. So,
not?
yeah, why not? So, whatever works for you. And then you can
Yeah.
obviously take it in stages as well as you develop that willpower and break that habit. So,
And
just
I
wanted to
actually
mention
think
that.
it's not only, I think you're right, but for me, I want you to know it's not willpower, it's actually fear. The fear of
Mm,
panic attack, of ever feeling like I used to feel and not
mm,
feeling like I do feel,
yeah.
is way bigger than anything for me. Honestly, I
Yeah. Because you've
never,
seen the
ever want to feel
juxtaposition.
like that. And I want to
Yeah.
make really clear that I sound like really rosy. I feel the best I have ever felt. And for me, watching my clients feel the best they've ever felt, there is nothing more wonderful. But I still have really tough stuff going on in life.
Hmm.
Real life happens, but this work, it just changes the game and makes you so much more resilient. You know, whatever happens, you've got you and you're always going to be okay because you've
Yeah.
gone through hard things and you've done it and you're still feeling the best you've ever felt. It's really empowering, business wise, life wise. That's all one package, and that's important to me that people understand. Life is one big package.
Mm. Yeah. And I know you have your shift life design system. So, can you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
I can. Yeah, of course I can. So this kind of was born out of realizing that you need something to refer to. I have never been the kind of coach, even when I was doing fitness, that wanted someone to need me forever. That's not for me, giving someone tools. So, with the Shift Life design system that I've developed, it's so you can work with me on regulating your nervous system, on creating a feeling from the inside out in life that is just infallible. But what if then I just taught you that and then you were with me 3 months and then off you popped and forgot everything you learned? That doesn't do it for me. So the Shift system is based on the acronym of Shift, that's my company name. And it goes through 5 stages. We start on self-awareness, which is the foundation of anything. And that is a massive, massive piece. It's how am I feeling now? How do I want to feel? What does my life look like? What do I want it to? It's a massive piece. What do we feel about ourselves? What do we think is possible? What do we not? So much comes out of that piece. It's gorgeous. The next bit is the H, the history. And now that often pulls on, why do I think this about myself? Where's this messaging come from? Why did I only think that was possible? And is that true? We really look into all that. You'll find a load of it, isn't? You heard me reference it before about being scared of heights. They were my mum's fears, not mine, actually. Then you go into the inner work. Now we all hear the inner work. What is it? It's
Mhm.
everything. It's reading books. It's listening to this podcast, isn't it? It's looking at other people who've done things you want to do and believing it's possible. Inner work's another massive piece that's very tailored towards you. And here is where you learn loads of tools that do work for you. Because we practice loads and you'll try bits and you'll chuck some stuff out and keep some stuff. And then when you've got all that in place, so you know you've imagine how much you'll know about yourself at that point. We then go back to future you, which is again, okay, so now I know all this. What do I really want my future to look like? Knowing that it's available. Yeah, and that's the future you piece, the F of shift. And then we go on to the transformation piece, the T. It's like, right, okay, that's what we want. How do we get you from where you are now to where you want to be? And that's where the real tangible, actionable, small, tolerable, nervous system friendly steps come in. And we start to build that into a progressive plan to get you there. But the brilliant thing is, every time you come up against a challenge, because you will, you know where to go back to. It's what do I do? I go back to the self awareness piece. And you can take yourself through the shift system for the rest of your life with all the tools you've learned. And you'll continue to learn more because you'll be so much more self aware of what works for you and what your real passions are and what really makes and what feeling good feels like. So, yeah, that's my shift system.
I love that. And I think it ties in
Thank
so
you.
well with the fact that, we started off with saying how a lot of anxiety and what you were experiencing and what many of us might be experiencing comes down to not being truthful with ourselves and not being
Yeah.
honest. And so starting with like, what is the truth about what I actually want for myself and my life is the foundational piece that a lot of people
Yeah.
aren't willing to look at or don't take the time to look at or don't want to admit to themselves what it actually is. And I think that's so, so powerful.
I think you're so right. And I think it's the way we've almost been brought up that that's selfish to want what you want. I think that narrative is really changing. Thank goodness that
For sure.
actually when if you are regulated and you are creating a life you love, your energy is such that everyone around you feels it, and they
Yeah.
start to, and you're just creating this whole world that's built from the inside out because this outside in thing is not working, is it? We're all
No.
suffering anxiety. It's not working that way. We're changing
Yeah,
it.
Marianne Williamson says that no one benefits from you dimming your light. And I've always loved that
So
because you
true.
don't benefit
Beautiful.
and literally no one else does. And yet we think we need to do that. Love it.
Love.
So, one more question as we start to close off. It's a question I ask all of our guests here. What is one way that you believe people can create a life that's better than their dreams and exceeds their wildest imagination?
Yeah, this is one I gave a lot of thought to because it just comes down to what I've talked about here. It's just learn to hear yourself. Spend some time quiet. Turn off the music, even if it's on a commute, a school run, whatever. Don't always have noise. Allow yourself to tune into you. Because only when you really feel and hear what you want and knows that that is important, that is the space from which the life you truly desire is created. Because until you feel happiness, true fulfillment from the inside out, nothing on the outside is ever going to fulfill that. So for me, it really is learning to get in tune to your nervous system, hear yourself, feel yourself, and live from that place. And
Mm.
it might sound woo, but I can't think of any more tangible way to put it.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. Thank you. And I know we're going to dive into some more practices for people, some practical tips in the Dream Life Club. So for anyone interested, you can
Yeah.
go to iheartmylife.com/club, listen to Georgie's exclusive episode in there as well.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you
Emily.
so much. Where can people find you online?
Okay, I'll have to spell this. So the best place to find me is Instagram. So if you find me at Georgie Shears Strategist, and that is Georgie. Shears is like the scissors, Shears, strategist. Yeah, and I just want to say, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, my DMs are always open. I love connection, real connection more than anything. So please do drop in and say hello.
I can vouch for that because you and I have had the pleasure of meeting in person and
We
chatting on
have.
Instagram and all the things. And you are one of the most genuine person I've met in a long time.
Likewise.
And you really live what you preach. And it's obvious. It's obvious in your energy, the way that you move in the world, even just your presence in the room is just a testament to the work that you do on yourself and everything that you
Thank you.
teach others. So you are the real
Make me
deal for
cry.
sure. Oh,
Thank you. And
thank you for being
likewise.
here. Thank you for listening to the I Heart My Life show. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with 3 friends or post about it on social media using the hashtag I Heart My Life show. And don't forget to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. It really does help us spread the movement far and wide. Remember, everything you desire is possible. Keep believing in your dreams and taking action.